A streetwise entrepreneur and his friends find themselves trapped in a rundown apartment building overrun by deadly, rapidly producing spiders. In the Middle East, a group of smugglers journeys through the desert in search of exotic animals. One man wanders up a dune and uncovers a spider cavern underneath a rock. He alerts his comrades and they pump a yellow-colored gas into the hole to force the creatures out. At first, nothing happens. But when the man peeks into the cavern, one arachnid jumps onto his face and attacks him. Soon, the other spiders spill out of the hole, and the smugglers collect as many as they can in plastic containers. Seeing their companion writhing in pain from the venomous bite, an older man grabs a machete and uses it to end his suffering. Days later in France, Kaleb asks Ali if he has better quality jewelry hidden away in the back room because he needs to find a gift for someone special. The storekeeper says he's heard rumors that the man resells his merchandise, which Kaleb vehemently denies, adding that he sells sneakers now. In the back room, Kaleb admires the man's exotic animals and then sees the spider inside a plastic container. He asks if it's for sale, so Ali offers the creature for 20 euros if he purchases the 80-euro gold earrings as well. Before leaving, the man secures the container with a hair tie from his wrist. In the rundown apartment building where he resides, Kaleb helps the custodian, Miss Zhao, with the trash. Suddenly, firecrackers on the floor startle the pair, and a group of mischievous teens flees the scene. The man catches Musa, admonishes his behavior, confiscates his bag containing the firecrackers, and hands it over to the custodian. Then, Kaleb makes his way down a flight of stairs with sensor-activated lights and turns the timer switch before walking along the basement hallway. On the opposite end, he sees his friend Matisse maneuvering a bike through the door and deduces that he stole it. In the storage unit where he keeps his merchandise, the man finds even more bikes, so he tells Matisse to return them because they need to focus on selling sneakers. The friend reminds Kaleb about Toumani's order. However, when he checks the box, he realizes it's got water damage from the leaky pipe on the ceiling. He instructs Matisse to find a new box for the shoes because he wants to run a respectable business. In the apartment he shares with his sister Mano, who's renovating the space, the man reprimands the sibling for putting their late mother's belongings in boxes like they're trash. In his room, Kaleb sees that Mano unplugged the heating lamps meant for his exotic pets, much to his annoyance. Then, he takes the plastic container from his bag and transfers the spider to an empty shoebox to serve as a temporary enclosure. Later, the man confronts his sister for unplugging the lamp, and she reasons that it runs up their electricity bill. He says he'll sell several pairs of shoes soon and they'll be able to keep the apartment. However, she disagrees and thinks they should sell the space as soon as possible because she could use the money to start a business. Kaleb calls her selfish for suggesting selling their home where they shared a lifetime of memories with their mother. He storms out of the apartment and heads to Claudia's place for the woman's farewell party. By the door, he runs into Toumani, who asks about his order. Kaleb explains he has the shoes but that they'll need a new box. Before he leaves, the customer calls his dog Maggie and emphasizes that he needs the new sneakers by tomorrow. At the party, Kaleb asks Claudia if she's sad about leaving the apartment, and the woman says she can't afford the space anymore but that she's glad the new place has a yard. Then, the man gives her the earrings and says he hopes she never forgets them. The woman appreciates the gift and adds that his late mother would be proud of what he has become. Meanwhile, in the bedroom, the spider tears a hole through the box and escapes. Later, Kaleb checks on the arachnid and realizes it's missing, so he searches the room and finds a cocoon inside the mounted butterfly frame on the bedside table. He tosses the egg sac into an empty shoebox underneath his bed, grabs Toumani's shoes, and decides to sleep on the couch in case the spider's hiding somewhere in his room. The next day, drilling noises wake the man and he barges into the bathroom. To his surprise, he sees Mano's friend Lila and the woman's boyfriend Jordi. The strained interaction between the two men implies that they were once good friends but had a falling out a few years ago. The couple explains they're there to help Mano with the repairs. Meanwhile, Matisse says he tagged along because he had the day off from work, then adds that he found a new box for Toumani's shoes. That afternoon, Kaleb hands Toumani his sneakers in the parking garage. Then, Gilles, an obnoxious tenant who plans on buying the siblings' apartment, suspects the friends of dealing illegal substances. Toumani calls his dog and they head back through the basement hallway. The man takes off his old sneakers, throws them in the bin inside the janitor's closet, and sits on the floor to put on the new pair. However, he feels a sharp pain in his foot as he slips on the shoe. When he checks what's inside, the spider crawls on his arm. He swats the arachnid off his body and squashes it with a sneaker. Suddenly, hundreds of spiderlings emerge from the shoe and crawl up his arm. While the man flails around in a panic, Maggie ingests the dead spider. Meanwhile, Kaleb returns to the apartment and finds everyone hanging out in his room and making fun of his exotic pet hobby. His phone rings and he sees that it's Tumani calling, but he ignores it. After telling everyone to leave his room, he closes the door and places a towel against the sill, baffling Mano. Concurrently, Tumani managed to return to his apartment despite the devastating effects of the venomous bite. A yellowish liquid leaks from his eyes, inflamed bumps cover his arm, and he stumbles dazedly across the apartment to try and reach his phone. However, the man falls to the floor, convulses, and ultimately perishes. Later, while Jordi and Matisse ascend the stairs, the former complains that his leg hurts, blaming the lingering pain on an injury he sustained years ago. Suddenly, Mr. Benzawi asks the men if they've seen Tumani because his dog's been barking non-stop in his apartment. In the hallway, Leela, a municipal cop, discourages Gilles from breaking down the door because it's against the law. However, she and the other neighbors concede, and once he kicks the door down, they find Tumani's lifeless body. Minutes later, the authorities arrive and the lieutenant tells the tenants to head back into their respective apartments. Jordi explains that he and Leela don't live there, but the cop insists that no one leave until they see a medic and ensure they're healthy, especially since they don't know what caused Tumani's death. Gilles says Kaleb sold illegal substances to the victim, explaining why he perished, and the accusation angers the latter. The lieutenant diffuses the situation and asks everyone to return to their homes. In the apartment kitchen, where Maggie hangs out with a group, Jordi states that the bumps on Tumani's arm didn't look like needle marks, contrary to Gilles' claim. Meanwhile, Miss Zhao sprays insecticide on the cobwebs inside the janitor's closet. Unbeknownst to her, dozens of full-grown spiders skitter behind the air vent on the wall, revealing that the species of arachnid develops and reproduces rapidly. In the apartment bathroom, several spiders enter through the exhaust pipe while the oblivious Leela washes her hands in the sink. She notices the hanging towel on the door moving, and when she checks, one arachnid crawls up her arm. The woman screams for help and hides inside the shower enclosure. Jordi grabs a glass to possibly trap the creature, but when the woman orders him to kill it with a broom, he obliges. The spider survives and crawls onto the partition, so the boyfriend swats it with a towel and stomps on it. However, when he lifts the cloth, thousands of spiderlings scatter, and more emerge from the shower drain. Eventually, the friends escape the bathroom, and they tape up all the spaces to ensure the spiders can't enter the apartment. At first, Kaleb denies that he had anything to do with the creatures, but finally admits he bought one spider. Nevertheless, he swears the female he purchased was 10 times smaller than the ones in the bathroom. In the bedroom, Matisse theorizes adaptation as the reason why the offspring are much larger than the original female. Then, Jordi finds spiderwebs in the mounted butterfly frame, and Kaleb says it made a cocoon which he placed in a shoebox. When the friend sees hundreds of spiderlings inside the box, he quickly shuts it, and Matisse secures the edges with tape. Meanwhile, by the main entrance, Miss Zhao sees the cops lock the doors from the outside to place the building under quarantine. After noticing more webs in the hallway, she checks the space above the ceiling and finds it infested with arachnids, so she sprays insecticide. But when she peeks again, one spider jumps on her face, causing the woman to fall off the ladder and down a flight of stairs. In the apartment, Jordi, Leela, and Mano want to leave and inform the cops who are outside the building. However, Kaleb and Matisse insist on saving Musa, Mr. Benzawi, and Claudia. Eventually, Jordi says they've got 15 minutes to gather the other tenants. The pair knock on the teen's door, but he can't hear them over the loud music in his room. Suddenly, Musa sees a large spider, but when he tries to squash it with his foot, he misses and kicks a hole in the wall instead. He sticks his head into the opening, and soon, dozens of spiders attack him. He screams, but his inebriated father, who's asleep in the living room, doesn't hear him. Meanwhile, Kaleb forcefully opens Claudia's door when she doesn't answer. The friends find the motionless woman in the living room. The man approaches, but as he's about to touch Claudia, spiders emerge from her body, prompting the pair to leave the apartment immediately. In the hallway, Mr. Benzawi begs them for help, but because he's exhibiting symptoms similar to Tumani, Kaleb orders the older man to get back inside. Confused, Matisse asks why they can't help him, so the friend explains the creatures are laying eggs inside the people they've bitten, which is why the spiders emerge from Claudia's body. Concurrently, Jordi reads up on arachnids online and learns that that for certain species, the females possess the ability to multiply their size tenfold to fend off predators. Suddenly, they hear a noise coming from the kitchen, and when they go to check, find spiders popping out of the dog's lifeless body. In the old man's apartment, he takes his final breaths while surrounded by dozens of arachnids he managed to trap under glasses and bowls. All over the building, the creatures reproduce, and each subsequent generation births larger offspring. Later, the men rejoin the others who inform them that they can't go back inside. As they're about to leave, Gilles appears and attacks Kaleb with a tire iron. The deranged man tells them to head back into the apartment and forces his way to Kaleb's room, hoping to find the illegal substances that caused Tumani's death. After exchanging knowing looks, they allow Gilles into the room. He sees the Tate shoebox and believes its contents confirm his suspicions regarding the men's illegal dealings. However, when he punches a hole in the box, spiderlings spill out and attack him. So the friends quickly leave the apartment and lock the door from outside. They run down the stairs to the side exit but find that it's overrun with arachnids. Mano suggests the parking garage, but after opening the door to the basement hallway, they realize they'll have to slowly walk through the spider-infested path. Despite her brother's protestations, Mano volunteers to go last because someone needs to wind up the timer switch to keep the light on. After the others reach the parking garage door, the woman walks down the hallway. Just as the timer runs out, Mano walks into a web, but she manages to wriggle away without disturbing the spiders. Now that they're complete, Jordi tries to open the door. To their surprise, the cops prevent them from leaving by pulling the handle on the other side. The uniformed men order the group to return to their apartments, but the panic noises gradually upset the arachnids. Suddenly, the cops spray a noxious gas through the crack to deter the survivors. When they continue pulling on the door, the men outside begin firing shots to get them to stop. The gas and the noise alert the dangerous creatures, leaving the friends with no choice but to run back to the other end of the hallway. After exiting the dark, smoky tunnel, they realize Jordi is still inside. Kaleb tries to go back for him, but upon seeing his friend wrapped up in spider silk, realizes it's too late. The man tells Lila that they can't save her boyfriend, which she refuses to believe. Meanwhile, Matisse sees even bigger arachnids emerging from a body on the ceiling and warns the others. The siblings drag the distraught Lila to a storage room, and she wails while covering her ears so she doesn't hear Jordi's screams. By the wall, Matisse finds Musa's confiscated bag with the firecrackers and a hand crank flashlight. Minutes later, the determined Matisse suggests they head up 15 flights of stairs to the roof and light the torches to alert neighboring buildings. Soon, the man tosses a firecracker on the floor, and the flash startles the spiders at the end of the hall, revealing that they're afraid of bright lights. As the group leaves the room, Matisse ignites a torch, hoping it'll deter the creatures from coming too close. After they slowly back away to the other end, Kaleb grabs a Molotov cocktail from the backpack and tosses it at the arachnids. This upsets the spiders, prompting the friends to run up the stairs until they reach Gilles' apartment. Mano, who's also been renovating the space, punches the combination on the key lockbox and opens the door just in time. Minutes later, Kaleb tries to comfort the grieving woman, and she asks why he and Jordi stopped talking to each other. The man reveals he and his friend dreamt of having a reptile zoo one day. Eventually, he got an iguana and it bit Jordi's leg. It became infected and he had to undergo surgery. Kaleb adds that when the cops asked what happened, Jordi ratted him out, so he never visited the friend while he recovered in the hospital. Eventually, when his mother died, Jordi never came to visit him either, further fissuring their relationship. He says he now deeply regrets ignoring his friend, especially after finding out how much pain he was in. Suddenly, 3 cops enter the apartment through the balcony, and even though the survivors try to explain the situation, they refuse to listen and arrest them instead. When Kaleb regains consciousness, he realizes they're in the parking garage, where men in biohazard suits spray an unknown liquid on a pile of dead spiders, while others shovel the remains into plastic bags. The lieutenant from earlier approaches and tries to explain why they had to quarantine the building, but Kaleb refuses to listen, especially since their actions led to Jordi's death. He turns around and sees the bite on Matisse's neck, who says he didn't tell him so he wouldn't worry. The friend states he'll rush toward the door to the basement hallway to release the spiders, hence allowing the others to escape. Despite Kaleb's pleas to reconsider, Matisse rises to his feet, runs toward the door and pushes it open. After a few seconds of silence, the spiders scurry and spread out across the parking parking garage, and the panicked cops fire their guns. In the chaos, Mano gets separated from Leela and Kaleb, and the man asks the woman to use a lighter to cut the zip tie binding his hands. While hiding behind a car, they overhear the lieutenant's screams as a giant arachnid attacks him. Then, he instructs the woman to hide in the car while he finds his sister. However, as he runs toward Mano, a bullet hits him in the leg, so the sister breaks a van window and helps Kaleb climb inside. The remorseful woman apologizes for pretending like she doesn't care about their mother's home and memory. He holds her close and places the hair tie on her wrist, explaining that it was their mother's. Moments later, spiders slowly enter through the broken window, and the siblings brace themselves for the inevitable. Suddenly, the flash of bright headlights and a loud car horn scare the creatures away. They realize it's Leela, so the pair jump out of the van and follow the headlights across the parking garage. The woman drives the vehicle through the pandemonium of gunfire, but as they reach the exit, Kaleb tells her to stop because they need to open the gate. However, a huge spider stands frozen in a defensive position because of the headlights. Despite the woman's apprehension, Kaleb says he needs to get out of the car to open the gate. As he stares at the imposing creature, he signals Leela to turn the light off. Much to their relief, the spider chooses to skitter away instead of going after the man. After he opens the gate, Kaleb walks out into the daylight. Days later, the survivors plaster the pictures of the friends and loved ones they lost that fateful night. Then, Leela and Mano watch the building's demolition from afar. Meanwhile, in the woods, Kaleb places a picture of him and Jordy at a reptile zoo inside an empty shoebox and buries it in the ground. As he rests on a fallen tree, he notices a spider on his shoulder and gently cups it in his hands. He stares at the arachnid for a few seconds, then indifferently blows it off his palm.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.